Hey dudes, and welcome back to The Bants. As always, I am your host, The Bants, and it's the beginning of another week, so it's time for our first What's Happening in Fashion this week, so let's just get right into it. And first up, I just wanted to let you guys know the What's Happening in Fashion Best of the Month for the month of February just got posted last night, so I will leave a link down in the description for that. But with that said, let's just move on to our headlines for the day. And for our first headline of the day, we have finally found out where Riccardo Tisci is headed. Yes, he is going to be the Chief Creative Officer at Burberry. And truthfully, I do think that this is actually a very good fit for him. I mean, just looking at kind of his past history in design, mainly at Givenchy, you can see that he does have a mix of punk ideas, and even though it was more in a streetwear sense then, he can also definitely mix that in very well into more classical pieces. And the fact that Burberry itself is very classical and contemporary, but has done some punk things here and there on the sides, even though it has been more towards women's wear in the past, I do think that he can really breathe some new life into the brand with bringing some fresh blood as well. And I'm really excited to see what he's able to pump out. At the very least, we'll get some interesting pieces along the way. And then in our second headline of the day, DSM Dover Street Market just announced and opened up their newest location, this time in Beijing, China. And in all honesty, there's not really a lot to say here other than congrats to them, especially in this time where we're having so much drought in retail and hardship in brick and mortar. To see a luxury brand and a luxury store like this being able to still open up locations, I wish them the best of luck. And in all honesty, as far as Adrian and Ray go, Beijing and them is just a match made in heaven, because God knows they're going to get a shit ton of money from them. Alright, and with that, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And in our first art story, and although not necessarily art itself, still definitely art related, Juxtapose put out a nice little opinion piece on what they consider the power of the stencil, or in this case, stenciled street art. And they basically go into just kind of the power behind it, what it means nowadays, what they need to do to bring it back to what it once was. And if you're a fan of graffiti or street art or just different types of art in general, I would definitely at least give this a read. Then Baker Skateboards just announced their newest deck collaboration with artist Christian Rosa, so if you want to see some more of those decks and images, I would definitely check those out. And lastly, Robert Proch showed off some of his newest pieces, and if you find yourself a fan of color, geometric shapes, and specifically in this case glitch art, I would definitely check these out as well. Alright, and then moving on into our fashion stories for the day, well-known boutique Bodega just announced their newest collaboration with New Era, and honestly, they just killed it here. At first glance, this might not come off as anything really special. It really just kind of looks like some very basic vintage military wear that's just been repurposed. But when you really start to look at it, you really see some of the just major detailing they did on it, whether it be done via graphics, done via embroidery, done via patches. And in all honesty, once you actually look at these pieces for what they are individually, they're really just really fantastic. And especially the hats, they're so well overdone and over above what I've seen. Just props to them on all of it. Then Tourne de Transmission showed off their Spring-Summer 2018 lookbook, and honestly, it was pretty brilliant overall. Starting off just based on the fits here are absolutely on point. I mean, when you look at the silhouetting, the layering, everything just makes sense. Every piece flows into each other very well. The colors are on point. Overall, it's just very well done. One thing I think a lot of brands have had a hard time doing a lot recently, especially in this age of maximalism, is making a coherent set of pieces for a line, and believe me, this is definitely a coherent set. Aside from that, a lot of the little minor detailing here keeps a lot of the pieces still fun and exciting, and honestly, the tech aesthetic from the accessories, mainly the bags here, really nice counterpoint to the rest of the collection, and really makes for a nice hybrid of style without feeling overly well done. So all in all, once again, props to Tourne de Transmission. Very consistent so far, and can't wait to see what comes next. Alright, and next up, and apologies up front because I'm totally going to butcher this name, but Goeie Katoen showed off their Fall/Winter 2018 collection, and it's interesting, I'll give it that. First up, just to quickly talk about the lookbook, I do have to say I really enjoy it. As somebody that always likes to see more of what's happening in the background, behind the scenes, this lookbook gives a little bit more of a brief dive into that, so very interesting take in that end. But then moving on into the clothes, the pieces themselves, it's a little bit interesting. Like, I do think that there are some nice designs in here, and there definitely are some very interesting designs in here as well. Do I think they all work? No, I don't think they all work. But I do think that a lot of the ideas here are very on point, just not necessarily executed correctly. Is it because they wouldn't make sense day to day? Maybe. Is it because they wouldn't make sense necessarily in most forms of menswear? Maybe that as well. But there is something just a little bit off that I feel like if designed maybe a little bit differently or taken in just a little bit of a different direction, they'd be a little bit more wearable in my opinion. But even with that said, the pieces that do work here do work very well, and a lot of the ideas that are brought up in this lookbook are still very fantastic, very interesting, and I'm really excited to see where this brand goes next. Like, genuinely excited. Then boutique Kith came together with well-known brand Champion for their newest collaboration, and in all honesty, I'm completely surprised that I'm saying this, but I think they did a decent job with it. As somebody who still to this day doesn't really consider themselves a fan of Kith, yes, they have put out some pretty solid collaborations recently, and yes, they have put out some pretty stellar in-house lines as well too. I still don't really consider myself a huge fan of the brand. And on the flip side, I just fucking hate Champion. But even going into this lookbook with those two ideas in mind, I'm actually fairly impressed what came out of it. Because usually when you think Champion collaboration, you think whatever brand they're working with a tiny ass fucking stupid little Champion logo on it. And this isn't the case here. Instead, what we have here are some pretty interesting designs as far as Champion goes. Yes, we still have the logos, and yes, we do have some very oversized logos as well too, but then some of the other things, mainly the embroideries here, the choice of fonts, their locations on some of these pieces, the colors they chose to use. Pretty interesting, in my opinion, as far as what you could possibly do with a Champion collaboration. I think they absolutely knocked this one out of the park. Does that mean I'm interested and would wear this collaboration? No. And does it mean that I've become more of a fan of Champion? Fuck no. But if either of these brands appeal to you, then you do you. Then Sacai showed off some new pieces from their newest 2018 collection, and I don't really know how I feel about it in all honesty. As somebody that really considers themselves a fan of Sacai, and even just a fan of Chitose Abe for that fact, I really feel like this lookbook really doesn't do her or the brand any justice. Sure, if you take a look at some of these images, you really can find some really nice, some very exciting ideas in here, some very creative techniques, things that obviously she would be known for. But I feel like a lot of it just comes off as muddled here, or dark, and I'd really like to see a lot more of these pieces up close and in person if possible. Is there a possibility that these pieces just aren't as interesting as I'd hope they'd be? I mean, yeah, that's totally possible. I mean, everybody can't be consistently perfect, right? But at the very least, I would at least hold off your opinions on this collection until we at least get to see the images individually, let's say. And lastly, Workwear brand 316 showed off their Spring/Summer 2018 lookbook, and I think they did a very nice job with it. Obviously, the thing you're paying for first and foremost is quality, and honestly, 316 is definitely up there in quality. They make really consistent, really strong, really durable pieces with very nice textiles, and you definitely get that in this collection here. And what's really nice on top of that is they didn't choose to just keep it monochrome and boring like so many other workwear brands do, or have done for basically ever, because that's kind of what workwear is, unfortunately. No, here instead they did choose some very nice looking materials and some very nice looking patterns. And I do think they were able to really brighten up the brand while still keeping it toned down, very earthy, very workwear-y. So I do have to give them major props for that. And on a quick side note too, they also just did a quick little collaboration with Alpha Industries, and I think they did a really nice job with that as well. The colors are very solid, the technical aspects are really nicely well done and are definitely there and visible, and truthfully, when it comes to maybe a little bit more technical piece that would still go well with their workwear pieces, they did a fantastic job here as well. So overall, between both lookbooks, very well done. Just can't say it enough. Very well done. Alright, and with that, let's move on to our articles for the day. And for our first article, once again, Grail put out another very nice, very well-informing article based on what they consider the 5 pieces of workwear that transformed fashion. And personally, I don't think I agree with all 5, but at the very least, I do enjoy their takes on why they chose what they did and why they did. And honestly, if you want to know a little bit more about history of fashion, specifically more on the workwear side and where that's taken us up till now, I would definitely check this out. Then Heddles put out a nice, quick, but still informative little article based on the different types of sneakers that are most common nowadays. So if you're interested in learning more about sneakers and might not know exactly what you're looking for by name, this is a great place to start. And speaking of footwear, Heddles also put out a history of the moccasin. So if you're interested mainly in the historical aspect of that up until where it is now, I definitely check this out as well. And lastly, Hypebeast put out a short but in-depth article on how Ruth Peterson's clothings and designs became such a staple in the UK rap industry. So if either of those interest you, I would definitely check that out as well. Alright guys, and with that, we've reached the end of our first Whiff for the week. As always, I hope you guys have enjoyed. And also, as always, if you want to see any more images, photos, art, or read any more articles that I talked about in today's video, I've linked all of them down in the description down below. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to talk fashion in general, feel free to hit me up in the comments down below. I am always willing to talk fashion. And as always guys, thank you for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you guys have a good couple of days, and as always, until next time.